Welcome to the Roundtable, episode 120. I'm Jennifer Eller, the Events and Environment Ministry Leader here at Life Church, and we have the one and only Mike Hill, our lead pastor, and then this beautiful woman, Mary Clark, who I just adore with my whole heart. So welcome, Miss Mary.
Sweet.
You know, Jennifer, it's a good thing I know you because
Why?
I just think it's funny when people refer to me in certain ways. There could be a very negative connotation or a very positive connotation to the one and only in this way and the one and only in this way. So,
Always good.
yeah,
The
I know
one
that
and
you
only.
love me, so I'll take the one and only in a good way. So, Mary, it's great to have you on. So I just want to just share personally from my own heart what you and Lance have met to Life Church, because that's the other thing that, you know, when I knew you were coming on and you were kind of like, is there an escape route?
I know, right?
Like, is there a way to get out? I think one of the things that people probably don't know that are coming now is you guys came in the hard times, you know, so you were here through the times where there weren't any leaders and there weren't any money. And honestly, most people who were leaders came and saw how hard it was going to be and said, I'm out, you know, and I always compare you guys to Steve and Twyla because Steve and Twyla were the beginning, you know, when it was, I don't even know if hard's the right word because it was so chaotic that I don't even know what we were doing. But you guys came in some times where Sherry and I and our family were like, you know, I don't know. This is so hard. And are we doing it right? Are we not doing it right? And so to see people who had come and have stayed, and not only stayed, but been a huge part of the development of leaders of Life Church to, like you guys just got done with Grow Night doing another marriage class, and you guys are like the, you know, superstars of teaching marriage.
Gosh.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I think people have had great response. I mean, I think people have said, whether it's through the curriculum, the way you're
It's the
teaching.
curriculum. Honestly, Francis Chan, he's amazing.
But it's okay to take some credit.
Thank you.
I mean, it's okay to say, you know, we have, because the thing that you've allowed is you've allowed yourself to be used even though you're busy everywhere else, right? See, that's the difference. Like when people come and they're in high leadership positions, it's not like they're looking for something to do. You know, Lance and Mary weren't looking for something to do, but you guys came and chose to make a sacrifice because you believed in Life Church and you believed in the things that were going on here, and you've stuck it out through difficult times. It's cool to see the fruit now, you know, and see what's going on. But I think for us, it's just a big thank you, you know, to you guys coming and being a part of, and and that you guys are going to be famous. That's the other part.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. That Lance's movie, like to think that Lance is the guy that the story Wayfaring Stranger, right?
Sweet.
Which is, I think that's still happening, right? The voting.
It is. And, you know, honestly, so we're right now on Angel Studios. You can go on the app and you can vote. We have to get 60% thumbs up.
Right.
It's at like 45. And even this morning, Lance is like, you know what? It might not be God's will. And that's okay.
Right.
You know?
But if you're a listener,
yes,
go on the Angel Studios app. That's the way to do it. So download the app. It costs you money, but it's only a one-time thing. And the thing that Lance has always said from the beginning, the power of story, and taking the power of story. And, you know, you can research more about Lance's own story of trying to figure out how to take film and put it in a way that changes people's lives and what he's doing at the university and how he brought it into that. So the $20 is well worth it, right? Go on there, go on the app, spend $20. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Go on there and spend $20 because if we want to change the world, we have to understand this. Movies and film change people's lives. They just do. And so we either have a choice to let Hollywood take it over.
Right.
Or let the Christian world take it over. And so I'm all for like, let's get on there. Let's get it done. And,
thank you.
You know, maybe when we put it out, maybe when we get this podcast out, we can put a link to all the people who are those type.
You're
Nick,
so
Nick's
sweet.
giving me a thumbs up, so he can do that.
Thank you.
Get it out there. So if you are a listener or somebody watching on YouTube, get it out there, share it, because that's the other thing that makes it possible. Share, get it out so we can get it out there. I think it's an incredible story. I loved it. I always said, if I watch a movie and I go home with something that changes me, that's a movie that's worth watching. So it was a movie that's worth watching. So anyway, thank you for all those things. So tell us a little bit about you. Last book that you've read that you loved.
Oh, wow. Last book that I've read that I've loved.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, it can be any kind of book. Or maybe movie, if it's like whatever, it's a little insight into your brain now, the things that you love.
Well, we just had a hallway conversation last week, and I told you I was going to send you books, and I haven't done it. But I just finished, I'm not going to remember now. I told you. You're like, you've been reading them. The same author.
Yeah, I have to go back in my
It's
phone.
the Pause app. It's, John Eldridge.
Yeah.
He wrote...
Either way, the last two books that he wrote are awesome, because one's about being in the presence of God and pausing and, and understanding.
That's the one I just
That's
finished.
the one I read on vacation. And the one I'm reading now is How to Hear from God. That's not the actual title, but I've always loved John Eldridge, and the things that he writes, because I think it just gives you a different perspective on it. Because the one's like, slow down.
That's Take Your Life Back. That's the one I just finished. Take Your Life Back. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
How to live in the midst of chaos, essentially, to be able to get your life back on the purpose that God.
I need that book.
Oh,
it's so good.
Doesn't everybody?
And I am living life in the fast lane right now.
Yes.
Such the fast lane.
Oh, it's so good. And I was telling Mike that it comes with an app, so it's called the Pause app.
I didn't even
don't
know
want
that.
the app, but
the app is so amazing. So it'll basically, you can set it to remind yourself to pause. And then, so there's right now I have 2 times a day where it's remember to pause. But the whole point is remember to reconnect to God. And then you can either have, it's really if you see the app, because in the book it's give everyone and everything to God. Give everyone and everything to God. And you can either have him read it to you or you can do it. But the whole book is about how do I pause in the midst of chaos and give everyone and everything to God. And he talks about our brains and cell phones and what that's doing and spiritual I mean, it's an amazing book. So I just finished that one.
And I think we missed the point of too many times in the Christian world, and I think this happens in Christian ministry, you're so busy doing the work of God that you don't feel the presence of God.
Yep.
And I think that's a problem.
And the presence of God is what changes everything.
That's what I mean.
Everything.
Yeah. That's why we've always encouraged our staff, I would love to see moments in your schedule that is pausing and listening, because then we can be assured of this, that you're going to do whatever he says, right? We can be assured that he's talking to you instead of what's the next best idea and what's the pressure of the people. Unfortunately, at times church becomes the pressure of the people.
Yeah.
So whatever the people want, you tend to mold yourself to it. And not that we don't love people, but we for sure love the Lord more. And so I think the church needs to be what the Lord wants it to be. And honestly, for people, sometimes that's not going to be what they want.
Right.
That's a reality.
I mean, think about Jesus.
Right.
He had to get away and people didn't want, they're like, I need more of you, you know? And he's like, no, I'm going to get away.
Right.
Nope.
Right. Teaching the trust factor and teaching people that we're not Jesus, I think in Christian ministry is a hard thing. Listen, I know I didn't answer your text for 2 days, but believe me, you're okay. You're going to be okay. Things are going to be fine. Right. The thing that you thought was urgent. So, I mean, last night I get a call from a guy at 11 o'clock. My phone's on Do Not Disturb, and I look and see who it is. And I'm like, well, I am not answering it because it's somebody who at this point thinks that I can fix everything. And I already know that I can't fix everything. So unless he leaves me a message that he's dying or on the street, I'm not answering the phone.
Yeah.
And what that will do is either cause him to push more into, okay, go to the person who can have the answer instead of who you think has the answer, or he'll be mad at me. One of the two, right? But we can't bail that out all the time.
So good.
We got to be okay to just say, you know what? I'm not going to be the one to fix it anyway. And if it's really that urgent, leave me a message and I'll listen to the message. But when they don't, that to me just says, it was not something that needed to be answered right then.
I think it's, boundaries, right? And So the second book that I just finished reading is it's called The Other Half of Church. And I love it because it's about brain science and neuroscience and how the church, I was telling Mike about this, but the last chapter is about the narcissistic pastor. And I was like, I don't even know if I even want to send this to Mike because he's going to be like, you're going to think I'm a narcissistic pastor. But that right there tells me.
You recommended the book and highlighted, read the last chapter.
You won't read this book.
Read the last chapter, by the way.
But because just the fact that, you don't think that you can solve every problem. That tells me you're not a narcissist. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to answer every call. Like I don't have to, you run to Jesus. Like, you know what I mean? So, but anyhow, that book is amazing. It's because it talks about how the church has traditionally focused on one side of our brain, just like the logical side of our brain and, following rules. And, but there's another whole side of our brain that is, Jesus was big time into the side of our brain that looks at pictures and images and tells stories. And if we just focus only on the one side of our brain, it's not really whole Christianity.
Right.
And so it's amazing. And we're learning more and more about the brain, and we can take pictures of the brain now, and we can, and true connection is both sides of our brain.
Right. And I think you guys, so I have 3 staff members in here that can answer this question. But so I have always said, the easiest thing to do as a staff is to use that side, not the other side, but the logical side.
Yep.
Tell me what to do. Give me a list of things to do.
Yep.
And I'm always saying, use the imagine, dream.
Yeah.
Is that true, false?
That's true.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's the hardest part to use.
Yeah.
To imagine the things that God wants the church to be, to dream about what could happen, to put ourselves out there in things that aren't that logical. Like I love that world. Like I love the world, to think that we're going to try some things that might not seem logical at all, but that opens up the dreaming and the imagination and the thoughts of, and then teaching the church to say, you know what? We don't want to lean towards your logical side, because the logical side of the brain says, well, what do I know? Here's what
yeah.
I know, Corinne, I know. I don't actually know but I know what people want. What people want is to come in and use the logical side of their brain. Give me a list, tell me what to do. If you give me a list and tell me what to do, you're a successful church. I'm like, we don't have anything to do. Here's all we want you to do. We got to get the Sunday morning done, so we'll do that. So and the rest of it is, what does God want you to do? So start dreaming, start imagining, start thinking, start processing. And that, if you listen to people in Discover Life, has been the hardest thing for them to do at life, to connect, because we don't give them the 100 things that we could keep them busy doing. We're just saying, I don't know, what do you want to do? What do you think God wants you to do? Wow. But I think that's true and hard at the same time.
Oh, I love that. And if you look at like the counseling office, like, our brain can't be reactive and curious at the same time. So when we look at the curious part of our brain, like that's like a goal of like every session, like let's be curious, because we can get deep if we're curious. But otherwise our defenses come up and like, oof, no, but if we're curious, and if you think about like, God was the creator God. Like he is very creative. He's very curious. Like it's beautiful to tap into that. It's amazing. Right. Amazing. Right.
Yeah. I've said this before in a podcast, when you listen to the Chronicles of Narnia. And so one of the first books, Aslan speaks the world into existence and he's singing it. And to this day, it still brings me tears. Like when I'm listening to it, to the thought of God, the creator, that spoke and breathed into existence all of the beautiful things that you see. Like you can just look around and you're thinking, it's so, that's just incredible to think. How did you ever think of these things? How is the expanse of who he is and the creativeness of who he is? And then we wonder, like, I wonder if he cares about my problems. It just expands the brain in ways that, I think are,
wow.
Yeah. So think about this. Go ahead.
Oh, and to think that he sang it. Stop it, Corinne. Can you is that like,
Corinne?
That's amazing.
Corinne's got food in her mouth right now. She can't. Go ahead, Corinne.
No, I just heard from a podcast I was listening to that humans and like God are the only like beings that were created to sing. So like angels weren't created to sing. If you look in scripture, like angels come and speak and they come and declare, but they don't sing. Like animals don't sing, but we're made in God's image and we can sing. And I just thought that was beautiful.
That's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
And that
some of us better than others, but we can all sing.
And, that uses the creative side of our brain. When we
Singing
sing.
does?
Oh, yeah. Because that book talks about it. Like we're a people that sing. We're a people that sing. And I don't care if you don't even sing good. Like it's my favorite to stand next to someone. Like Sherry couldn't carry a tune, and I loved singing with her. It was my favorite.
Runs in the family.
Oh, it was my favorite. Like when she was worshiping and just bellowing it out. Oh, I just literally cannot tell you how much I loved it. It was precious.
I do too, but I'm glad I sit in the front row. That way nobody hears me, right? Yes. Like I'm past everybody and you can't do that. All right, so Mary, couple things. So through your experience in life, through your professional experience in being a counselor, through just being with people, what do you think are some of the big issues facing the world today? We talked before the podcast, is it family? Is it marriage? Gender is this new thing that's coming up. But you meet with a lot of people, talk with a lot of people. You've been in a lot of different phases of life. Now, what do you think are some of the biggest problems facing people today? Is that too broad of a question?
I mean, I think I really honestly and I love how, as a mental health counselor, I believe that all truth is God's truth. So whatever the secular psychologists are this is truth. Well, if it's really truly truth, it's God's truth. And so I would say isolation, I think isolation is huge. And God said it's not good for man to be alone. And there's a lot of, we think we're connected by texting or Facebook. It's like a false connection, but it's not a real connection.
So do you think isolation is the root cause of a lot of issues that we see on the forefront? So kids struggling with identity, marriages that are struggling, people with addiction. Is there a root cause of some of these things? Just we've become more isolated than we ever have, so we have no capacity. One of the authors that I was just reading talks about some of the mental health problems that we have today is becoming more in the forefront because you're finally getting a group of kids who grew up without learning how to communicate. Yeah. Right. So these kids grew up with the idea that you don't honestly have to speak, even in the home. Right. You never talked around the table. There was no deep conversation. You had a TV or you had an iPad or you had a phone. So you never learned. And he was using, I know who it was, Andy Andrews. So, and Andy was talking about the idea before that, you sat around a table. Kids came into rooms when adults were there. And because what else are you going to do? You know? And so you're seeing a group of kids that are now having mental health issues that are carrying over into multiple different areas because they honestly don't know how to have a deep conversation. Right. Do you think that's true? Do you think I
think it's definitely, yeah. And there's false connections. And the other thing is because of social media, there's a pretense that we put out. We can't be vulnerable. We can't be real. We can't have those real conversations, right? And you could look at marriages, okay, isolation in marriage, are you connecting emotionally with your spouse, or are you, connecting with social media? Or let's look at the big issues. How could isolation be identity? Gender identity. I don't know who I am. So, I think it could,
Yeah. So let's start with, because I'll just pick on some people for a second. So I think one of the hardest things, this is something that I've always said, and I think it's worse lately. Like, I think it's hard for men to have conversations.
Yeah, it
like,
is.
I think it's a difficult for a man to have like with his kids. Like, I think it's easy to have a conversation about what you did in sports, how you can be better in sports, but to sit down and talk about who they are, and the things about them. And then I think it carries over into a marriage. Like, I don't know that there's a lot of depth that goes into conversation. And I have always said I think part of the problem is that a lot of men are just perfectly fine being alone, right? They do. I mean, they're around people, but they're alone. Does that make sense? Like, you're in a shop and you're working with a bunch of people, but you're honestly just, you're by yourself and you're with your own thoughts and you walk through your own head, or, you really don't engage into, because the first indication for me is when you sit down with somebody, and you might have experienced this. Have you ever sit down with somebody who never asks you one question? You know what I mean? Like, you sit down in a conversation and that person will never ask you anything. Right? You're always like, hey, tell me about, and hey, tell me, like, and the person never comes back because they honestly don't have any interest in you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't, that is a learned thing. Like, they just, they have learned to not just only care about, and this is maybe not just men, but I see it a lot of men, we'll go and we'll sit down and people ask me like, so what'd you think? And I said, well, here's the only thing I think. I think it's weird when you sit in there and that guy never asks one question about either one of us. Like, isn't that weird? And I think that's an indication of a bigger problem.
Yeah.
When somebody's not willing to ask questions, but willing to spew everything about themselves.
I mean, don't you think that, don't you think women do that too? Like, I mean, it's awful, but I think that our sin nature, we love to talk about ourselves.
That is for sure. Because I do meet with a lot of people, and that's usually they talk about themselves all the time.
Really?
Yeah, I've had people ask me about me and want to learn, but for the most part, no. They just people want to be seen.
Yeah.
That I chair.
Yeah.
And it's all about me.
Well, because I've always grew
high
up
chair.
with, this is the thing that I always grew up with. Like, I messed up always. So I tend to want to ask questions to learn. Like, I'm thinking, if I'm going to sit with you, I want to know.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know where you come from. I think asking questions is the only way to learn. So even when you sit down in a meeting with somebody, I would assume that person would come with a lot of questions. Like, what about you? And what do you think? And what have you been through? And what does it look? Because that's me. I'm like, I want to try to learn from you, right or wrong. It could be you tell me something, I'm like, man, I'm never doing that. But you learn one of those things. Like, I don't understand why people don't want to learn about somebody else. And you think that's because of the sin nature? Like, they don't care?
I mean, I'm sure there's part of our wiring, and we could blame it on social media, but I remember when Lance and I first started dating, and that was like a thing. Like, I'm like, are you a question asker? You know what I mean? Like, I am drawn to people that ask questions, and so we can't blame it on, because that was way pre-social media, but I think
But you said isolation, because isolation is not a new thing. Social media added to the problem of isolation, but isolation has always been a thing, right? Like, I think we can add the social media has now made it worse, but I think you did identify an issue, right? And that issue is if there is an isolation centered around selfishness, you won't be a question asker.
If I'm isolated and happy in my isolation, I'm not going to ask you a question.
Right.
Right?
That's what I think.
That's what I think.
Yeah. And I just think that's a struggle, for people. Do you think, Jennifer, like, do you think that's an issue for people to be, like, you're saying when you meet, but you see a lot of people. Do you think it's an issue across the board, or is it just,
I think so. I think people are just in their own lane and they're just doing their own life and they're trying to get the day completed, and they aren't thinking about other people. That there's a bigger picture to what's happening.
And that's the reason they wouldn't ask the question, because they're just like, they're in your lane, you're just going down the lane, and yeah. Mary, do you think in the midst, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, also, do you think that it's a really safe way to not go deep? Right? If you ask a question you might have to go deep.
Yeah, but okay.
I think that's with guys.
Huh?
I will say that probably with guys. You ask them a question and they don't want those emotions and all of that, or even people in general, all that baggage. You know, I don't want people to know what my past is. I don't want to have to admit something. I don't want to have to. Yeah. So I think that's valid.
Yeah, but do you think that the reason that people don't, so you're saying one of the reasons is because somebody asked me a question and I don't want to unveil that. So I would say that that's partially true for multiple reasons for me. Like over 25 years, I've built up defense mechanisms, right? And so part of my problem, you know, and I admit it all the time, part of my problem is that every time I have loved really deep, I've lost somebody. And I'm like, some of that pain becomes unbearable. You know what I mean? And so you just wonder how much you can let yourself out there. How much can you care? How much can you let your emotions? And I know it's not right. Like I get that, but sometimes life allows you to build up mechanisms of defense, and that's a learned how to tear it back down. Because that's the thing I got out of the John Eldridge. And I told Sarah this, I told Sherry this. Part of my problem today is I lack feelings. You know what I mean? Like I have this, I don't know how to describe it. Like back in the day, just to have fun and cut loose and not care, like I don't have those things anymore. Like I don't have that in me. And, you know, it's just, I think it's years worth of just being a robot, getting it done, going through the process, meeting with tons of people, have a lot of hurt, sitting in hospital rooms with moms watching their kids die, sitting with wives watching their husbands die, sitting in rooms and watching people grieve, you know, being a part of funerals for young children, seeing people that you love. Like there's just this, and I'm not alone. I mean, everybody does that, right? Like everybody has those things. But I think for me personally, that's been a defense mechanism. And after reading the Eldridge book, that's what I'm really trying to work on. Like I would love to have feelings again.
That's so good.
You know what I mean?
That's
and
so
I
good.
hope nobody's taking that in a weird way. Like I have feelings, like I love, but there is a part of me that has protected some of the deepest wounds of my life to just try to make it, you know what I mean? To get by and be a part of that. So I get part of that. Like some of it, I'm not going to unveil. The bigger question I have is that are people even thinking deeply? Because like, this has been a training, like Sarah's kids, like when they get home and we sit around the table and I'll be like, hey, tell me about your day. So we talk about their day and how did God speak to you today? Did you hear anything? Tell me about, you know, something that was good. Tell me about something. They're like the thought process of anything being deeper than I had this for lunch. This happened on a test. You know what I mean? Like that concept, or even it was new for Sarah when I would be like, tell me what you're thinking. And I want to hear everything. Like I want to process everything. I want to ask you questions like, what it was like with Dwayne or other things. Like that's not something that's normal. So that was harder for her to think of those things that are just like, hey, I haven't processed, or what is God saying to you? Or what are you struggling, trusting in? And what are the hard things? Like I think sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to think that deeply.
Right.
I think.
Well, and you brought up defense mechanisms, right? So that's like, all this is like counseling 101, right? It really is. Like, it's amazing. Like, honestly, like, Mike, you are a natural counselor. You really are. He is.
Look at Corinne.
He is.
Go ahead, say it, Corinne. I don't mind.
Nope.
I mean, question asker, feelings. Like, I'm sorry. Corinne, you can disagree. But
New profession for Mike. We'll have an office for counselor Mike now.
Do what?
We'll have an office that says counselor Mike on it. So
Counselor/coach.
But
Maybe
you
that.
know that I think that our defense mechanisms that we build up, I mean, it's so much easier to be like, I don't know, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. I'm good. I'm just good to be in the workshop. I don't need anybody else. I'm good. I'm better alone. Feelings are hard to feel.
Right. No,
They're
yeah.
painful. And
Right.
I was just reading, I need to go back. Remember the part in the Chronicles of Narnia where I think it's it's been a long time. I literally have not read them since I read them to our kids when they were little, but it's Eustace and he develops that skin.
Yeah,
right?
he becomes a dragon.
Right. And the skin is the defense.
Right.
And the skin is, no, I'm not going to feel anymore. It is too painful.
Right.
It's too painful to feel.
Right.
And I hear guys, especially a lot in the counseling office say, I want to know how to feel.
Yeah.
But women too. Feelings are hard.
Right.
Feelings are so hard. And God made us that it's not really fun to feel alone.
Right.
We can't really, he made us that we need others. Back to isolation, right? Shoot.
Right.
Back to isolation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I just think that it's both ways, right? So there is a part of like, we need to feel and we need to start tearing down, and then we also need to protect, right? I think that's the other part of it. Like, I think there is a boundaries, back to what you said. There is a natural defense mechanism that is healthy, right? To not surround yourself with people that are going to drag you down all of the time or get into those places. But then there's these other places where you should let your guard down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we should have, so in a husband and wife relationship, out of anything else you have, and this is where I'm guarded. Like, I'm very guarded. Like, people ask me, how are you doing? Somewhere in the middle. Things are like, there are only certain people I'm going to be like,
Totally.
this is how I am.
Yep.
Right. Because I want to guard that. Like, I think there are certain people that's safe to say.
Yep.
You know, like I said, I called Lance on the way to Riley down to Methodist Hospital after I read the report, because there was only one person at that point I was going to cry to, because I hadn't cried the whole time.
Wow.
You know, in those things. So I think there are certain people you can just let it out and then be done with it.
Yep,
you know?
absolutely.
And then there are other people. So I think that's the other thing that you're talking about, is making sure there are some people we do need to put boundaries up with and guard your feelings and guard your heart. And then there are other people we need to let it go.
Right. There's that. We're not going to just share our deepest, intimate parts with everyone. Of course. Right.
But we should be doing it in our family. Because isn't this part of the breakdown of the family? That there is no communication between husband and wife that's deep and intimate.
Yep.
But like, I'm assuming if you're talking about some of the deepest things, because you started off loving each other.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, everybody started with this passion, and then it just went away because conversations went away from passion and it became duty.
Yep.
You know, and marriage becomes duty. Relationship becomes duty. It doesn't become intimate anymore. You know, and so that whole idea of breaking down isolation to the idea of how do we get to the place where you don't have to be it with anybody else, but husbands, you better figure out how to do with your wives, or wives, you better figure out how to do with your husband, I would assume.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, like getting to the point where you can see each other's pain.
Yeah.
Right. That's where you get deep.
Yeah.
When you're like, I want to be the safe person that I can share emotions with. And then those defense mechanisms get in the way, or hurt gets in the way, and we build up the walls. And
and this could be a whole topic, but I'll put a plug in for men. You ready, Nick? Since we're the only two in the room, right? Here's the plug in for Nick. You know why Nick and me both are all men. You know, part of the reasons we don't share our feelings, because it's not safe. Because our wives at times take those feelings and use them as ammunition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, all I'm doing, I just want to tell you how you feel. You don't have to remind me that it's my fault, because I know.
Right.
Like, I already know. Like, you don't have to remind me that it's my fault. You don't have to remind me that I'm the reason we're in this situation. You don't have to remind me that it's me that can get me out. You don't have to remind me of all, like, but it tends to be that. Well, you know, the reason we're in this situation is because of you.
Right.
You know, the reason we're in these places is because of you.
Right.
So I think for a guy, I don't know if Nick, you can weigh into this, but I think for a guy, it's just better just to be quiet. That's why sometimes we just isolate and be quiet. I agree. Yeah, Nick's shaking his head.
I think it can go to the wife too, because sometimes we want our husbands to realize that we need something.
Yeah.
Or we try to express it and then they don't care about it.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't respond. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, you're too busy. You're doing whatever. So it's a
Both
two-way
ways.
street for sure. But
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've been that before.
Which part?
Probably crushed my husband.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Well, I think we've all been on both sides.
Oh,
of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
totally.
You know, I just think
Totally.
the biggest thing is that, so we're talking about some of the biggest issues. The thing is just recognizing where I've been and try to be different.
Totally. And, you know, this comes up in the counseling office all the time where it's like, I try to say, like, this is a sacred place. Like, when we share deepest parts of our heart, we cannot use this as ammunition later, right? Like that, this is we're just going to put it on the table right now. You're going to share deep parts, and this should not be used as ammunition. But, you know, when we love someone, gosh darn it, the people we love the most, we know how to hurt them. And we will if we have it, our sin nature part will be like, oh, I've got ammunition.
Right.
They shared their
Weaponize
deepest
it.
part.
Yeah.
They shared their deepest part, and I know exactly how to poke them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're already at 35 minutes.
Oh, good.
Good. Like, no, just one other thing, and we touched on it earlier, from a mental health standpoint, because I think we could also say that part of the reason we have mental health problems today is isolation, right? Like some of that goes with it.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest, and I'm just going to deem it mental health, maybe it's not, but the whole new thing coming up, gender identity, the things that are coming up in the world, what's the best way for us to help address those things, talk about those things, and walk down those roads? I mean, I know you don't have an expertise on it, but is there any way that, because it is real, right? And it's happening not somewhere else now. Like it's here, right? Like it's things that are happening with our children today. And so maybe you don't even have to address, maybe it's just better to do this. We know we have a lot of issues, right? Whether it's gender, whether it's marriage, and a lot of it's dealing with mental health, isolation issues. So how about, could you give us some tips or tools that you would recommend to help with the process of mental health, help with the process of isolation? Like, are there some things that you could recommend to our audience that could help us learn how to break out of some of those places? And then maybe we can talk about some of these other things down the road.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Mike, that is a zinger of a. I mean, I feel like you answered it. Like, you know, asking questions, like open-ended. I mean, in grad school, how do you ask an open-ended question? What's that like for you? Or just an open-ended question. Like, that's how we get deep with people, right? That's how we. And
so is that what you would recommend so let's just take parents who have kids.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start with that. So parents who have kids that naturally want to isolate, right? So I think that's the natural thing. So there is this, when they get home, they retreat, you know, and tend not to come out until they need something. That'd probably be fair to say with most kids. So how can we as parents, is there creating atmospheres or times? Like, is it important to try to sit around a table? Is it important to have a time where you do things together? Like are those just some of the...
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Wouldn't you agree? Oh, yes. Sure. Yes. I mean, otherwise though, those things will never happen, right? Okay. You will never have, you have to, you know, it's been a long time since we've had young kids, but, you know, dinner was really important, because otherwise, when are you going to connect? Right. I mean, right. So yes, I love it. Creating atmospheres, open-ended questions.
But you have kids that are having kids. So, I mean, this is going to be something you're going to be training them on, right? Like, and what are the recommendations you're going to give to them? Create space for those things.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. It's just definitely harder today. But
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right. What about for married couples that are struggling with isolation or struggling with deep communication? Is it the same thing? How do they get to a place where they can ask those type of questions?
I mean, it's all about like attachment, right? Like, am I safe do I feel seen by you? Okay. Do you see my pain? You know, is it safe to attach to you? And what will you do with my pain, right? And do you really see my pain, right? I mean, I just think we just need to see each other's pain. I know I've said that a lot, but I mean, I think with married couples, I mean, we can have emotionally corrective experiences where but, you know, I think, you know, I just had someone, you know, I don't want to talk about my clients, but I mean, you know, if there's a big injury, that's complicated, You know what I mean?
Sure.
So like,
Right.
you can't be like, there's this big injury. You guys just go spend time together. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Right.
that's hard.
Yeah, that's a whole.
That's
I
hard.
think that's a different road. Like you should see a counselor.
Right.
Like if there's a big injury,
Right.
you should
Right.
seek a counselor. A Christian counselor going to help you walk through that
Right.
journey. But we're just trying to talk to the parents or the kids or the families to the marriages that are just not where they need to be, but you know, the little things to help them to be able to connect.
So we can create attachment rituals. You know what? Like husband and wife, do you sit in the morning and have coffee? And, you know, God made our brains that he made our brains so amazingly creative that we can like remember times that we were close. We can remember coffee in the morning. We could text each other and say, I just love sitting next to you this morning. Like that was really fun to be with you. Or last night was really fun sitting, you know, we can we call it making the neurotrace bigger. So when we have those moments, we can sit in them and savor them. And, you know, in the counseling office, we can be like, what's it like to have this person next to you that loves you and is on your side? And, but we can do that. You guys can do that at home too. You know, you can be like, it feels really good to be close to you right now. Or with your kids, you know, thanks for sharing your heart. I feel like I understand you a little better. Am I getting it? Am I getting it?
Yeah.
Is that really, because I want to understand you. Like, do you feel understood or what do you need? I mean, the two questions in counseling that could be taken anywhere. What are you feeling? And with guys or with women, sometimes we can widen our emotional landscape. We don't even have the emotion words, but there are emotion lists, and we can be like, okay, I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, because sometimes we don't even have the words.
Right.
But God made our brain also, when we can say, oh, I actually am feeling confused, it calms our brain down to say, okay, that's what I'm feeling.
Right.
Like we feel better. And then to have somebody else say, I see that you're confused, and tell me more about confused.
Right.
I want to sit in confused with you. But I just lost my train of thought. But you know,
creating atmospheres to be able to share those types of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And with our kids, we can do that. And
Yeah, I think too, it's even if you could just start with this is what I always tell premarital, now whether they follow through with it. I said, if you can get to the place where once a week you can look across at the person that you love and just ask this question, am I meeting your needs?
that's fantastic. And
That's all you have to do.
that is
Am I meeting your needs? And if I'm not, I am not going to be, because I say this is the number one thing I did wrong in marriage in the beginning. So when Sherry and I were first married, I didn't know or understand any of those things. But when we did get to the point where in a roundabout way, she would tell me I wasn't meeting her needs, I would be immediately mad. So I had this well,
Defense.
I do this and I
Yeah.
do this. And
Yeah.
how do you not see that?
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I mean? But
Right.
what I try to teach in premarital counseling is you got to be able to ask it and hear it. So
good.
if you can't ask it and hear it, then you're going to be in trouble. So you need to be able to understand that whether it's right or wrong is not the place that you need to be.
So good.
It's the way that she feels or it's the way that he feels, not the way you feel. So you have to come to the place to say, so if she says, I'm lonely, you can't give her excuses of why she shouldn't be lonely, right? You should say, I have to understand, why is she lonely? What do I need to do about it? Right.
That's
so it
so
doesn't
great.
even matter if I think I'm right and she's wrong. True marriage is not about right or wrong. It's about understanding what they feel and trying to make a difference in moving towards, like, if they feel it, whether it's a perceived reality or a reality, both of them are reality.
See,
Right.
this is Mike, the natural counselor, guys.
But you know what I mean? Like,
No.
so we have to be able to say it. Okay, what am I meeting? So if we can sit down once a week and just say, am I meeting your needs?
Right.
And we can be open and honest and say, no, like this has been a bad week. You haven't been home. You've been gone. This has happened. You came home and you were disconnected. And I'd be like, okay, like, I don't know why you feel that way, but let's talk about it more. And what can I do better next week?
You're amazing.
If we could just start there, I
Right.
think we could get a lot better off. But I think it's hard to get over the fact of saying we want to defend why we weren't that way.
Yep. And again, we go back to the pain needs to be seen.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
so that you went right where I was going to go. So the two questions in counseling are, what am I feeling? And the next one is, what do I need? What are you feeling and what do you need? And which is your same thing, right? Am I meeting your needs?
Yeah. Am I meeting your needs?
But, what are you feeling and what do you need? And we can see each other's pain and we can connect on a deep level. Those are good, deep questions that are hard to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we might have
we don't want to
some
hear the
things.
answers sometimes.
Right. And then our defenses, kick in and
Yeah. And I think the reason that it's a struggle to answer the question is because when they say no, you're not meeting my needs.
Right.
We always have, especially for guys. And again, I don't understand a women's brain, but I know for a guy, we always have a list of why they're wrong and why we're right. So when you say you were lonely, I'm going to tell you, but I was home this night and I was home this night and I did these things and I did this and I thought we went on a date and I thought we did. And so what's your problem?
Right.
I mean, that's like
and then she's like,
you know what I'm saying? Like that is not
then,
that's how we say it, but that's how we say it.
Right.
And so I just finally got to the place where I had to realize this. When Sherry would say, or even now when Sarah would say, I'm lonely, you're disconnected or you're distant, it's because she loves me,
Absolutely.
not because she's against me.
Absolutely.
And I always took it as when she would say it that she was against me.
Yep.
Like it was
Yep.
just a jab. And I'm like, you know what? It's because she loves me. Like she's not saying those things because she hates me. So I might as well figure it out, right?
Yep.
Like it's be out of love. And then that changed everything for me.
So good.
So
good.
Yeah.
And your pain, I have been trying, like that, if we could just look at each other's intentions and no, that's amazing.
Okay, Jennifer, questions. Did we have any?
Well, we have a lot.
What? What?
I love you, Mary.
Did that
tell
surprise you?
Last time we had 10. Let's see what I got. Yeah, still. Oh, I have 11 now. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Stop it. I
So-
thought we were like done.
We just never
So
know.
we'll see here.
What?
So, okay. Patty Myers, no question. Just I love you, sister, to my dear friend. I'm so thankful to have your
precious.
friendship and your advice in my life.
Oh my gosh. Stop it. Love you, Patty.
Bree Sullivan, we adore Mary. What is your best advice for slowing down to make time for your spouse when life seems to move so quickly?
I feel like we've already answered that.
I feel like a lot of it we talked about.
Great question though, Bree. You're amazing.
And P.S. Give Ginger Marcia a kiss from all the Sullivan kids. Now, who's Ginger Marcia?
So they gave her to us, their dog.
Aww.
And so she's our adopted baby and she's so precious. And she had several kisses this morning from me.
Okay, Jamie Tackett, what are the qualities you appreciate most in your friends?
Oh, I mean, I feel like we covered that here.
Let me answer one. Loyalty. That is the thing I appreciate the most.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to have struggles, but the people that are there at the end of the war, those are the people I'd die for.
That's fantastic. I think vulnerability. Like I think that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. If we can just be honest that none of us are perfect and we're all just trying to figure this thing out, and I appreciate that a lot.
Jennifer, do you have one that you would appreciate the most?
I think, honesty is a big one too. It's like, I want to be honest with people and I want them to be honest with me, even if I don't want to hear it.
Good for
That's
you.
good.
We talked about that. Yeah,
yeah,
we need to be honest with each other, and it's the only way you're going to learn and grow. And Tammy Dennis, how do you stay positive in your field when there is so much of a mental health crisis? How do you keep it from weighing on you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hear that a lot. First of all, I taught Bible Trailer for 15 years, and I think that was a really great precursor for me because I heard all these awful stories from these little precious 8 and 9-year-olds that would be like, my dad's in jail, or, just horrible things. I'd have to just give it to God because I saw them 1 hour a week, and it was heavy. I think that I tell myself they're getting better by talking, and it's it's true, and I don't know. I feel like
I think that you've said this before. Like part of it's being able to say, and I trust that if I did my best, God will do His best.
Totally,
Right? We have to, because I can't even imagine thinking that what if I said something wrong or what if they do that, right?
No.
Like, yeah, I mean, I've heard you say that before of like, I do the best I can. I'm going to trust God that he can do what only he can do.
Yeah.
To help take some of the burden off.
Yeah, I can't carry it. It's him. It's him. It is totally him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Keely Oswald, in your opinion, what's the best way for the church to partner with parents to help kids develop a strong relationship with Jesus?
Oh, man. Gosh. The best way for the church to partner with parents.
Yeah, because the struggle today is we get them for an hour, but we know that long-term discipleship happens in a family.
Yeah.
You know, and so how do we help equip families, you know, in that realm? And I think that's a lot of what she's asking is how can we, because we programmatically have something on a Sunday. Yeah. Is there things that we can do, you know, for parents to help that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think parents, what do you need? You know, what do you need? Do you, asking parents what they would need? I mean, I think again, you know, community is huge. Like, how do we connect you guys? Like maybe I have a child that is autistic, you know, how do we connect you with other parents that have autistic children? Or here's my struggle with this particular, how do we just connect you guys and have you guys link arms and just march to Jesus, you know, like, it's probably simple. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I just remember that. I remember the days, if this is still a thing, the MOPS groups.
Oh, my word. I lived with moms.
Yeah, so sure. I feel like when they were young, moms of preschoolers, you know, so they would all get together and
that's important.
Share an experience and share in raising kids and encourage each other through, because I think it was a Christian thing.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I remember those days.
It was a great break, or, you know, play dates or figure, you know, who do you want to be around? Who do you want, what iron do you want to be around in your life and figure out how to get around it.
Yeah, good.
And she says, your smile is always so welcoming. Aww. So, for sure.
Sweet.
Peggy Eads, how her and Lance met. What is your favorite characteristic of Lance? And when did she give her heart to Jesus?
Oh my gosh.
When did you guys meet?
So we met, we went to high school together, and he was 2 years older than me. And so he did not ever look my way in high school. Like he was way out of my league.
And you went to high school where?
We went to Blackhawk Christian.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And actually his brother is my age. And so we were really close. So that was probably like, Lance is like, I'm not gonna. So then I was at Taylor University and Lance was at Huntington. And we came back to Blackhawk Christian for a homecoming, and he just started flirting with me. He noticed me finally for the first time, I guess.
And it was all downhill after that.
And so
downhill.
No, I mean like.
So he started flirting. No, the rest of the story is kind of good. So then so this is like back in the day when there was one Christian radio station, and I was like, he's talking big or whatever. But he was like, I am a DJ on WBCL radio, and I was like, whatever. He is so not a DJ.
Was he really?
Wow.
I was like, there's no way he's a DJ. And he's like, yeah, if you're ever listening, you should give me a call and request a song. Like he's like this, like, you know, hot, you know, DJ, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, he's not even being real, whatever. So it was like, I don't even know how long later, like months later, I was driving in my car and I was listening to WBCL and I heard Lance. He's like, this is Lance Clark. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So Lance
really is a DJ.
So Lance has always been famous.
Yeah. So I called him. I called him right then in the car.
Did you really?
Or when I got home, it wasn't not in the car because it was pre-cell phone. But yeah, I called him and he was like, what are you doing tonight? You want to go out?
Aww.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's always been famous.
So what's your favorite characteristic about him?
Oh my gosh. There's not one. He's amazing. He's so fun. He's so spicy. He's so calm. He has like the biggest faith. Like his faith is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I tend to be anxious. He calms me down. He always makes me laugh. Oh my gosh, I could just go on and on.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Lisa Leist, what cracks you up most about your marriage? We kind of answered that. Unless there's something funny that you kind of...
What cracks me up most?
Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Boat rides with Lance.
He cracks me up. He's great. He's just always making us laugh, bringing the spice.
So Adam Shoemaker, he was excited. He said yes. He excited you were on today.
Aww.
He had 2 questions. We'll answer one. Are there benefits that religious beliefs have on a person's mental health?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Great question. Yeah.
Do you feel like if people aren't of faith, that they struggle more
Oh, totally.
with issues in the world than if
Totally.
they are relying on God?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's our foundation, right? And, if we're looking at like attachment, that we need to attach to people, God is our first attachment. He is our 100% everything. We get everything from him, right? He's our safe haven, our secure base. He can help us take our thoughts captive. He can tell us what's true. I mean, it's 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Good.
Tammy Gass, only praise for Mary, wonderful sister in Christ.
Precious.
Gina Van Meter, what has been one of your funniest memories with Jesus?
Funniest memories. What? Leave it to Gina. Gina.
I actually have a good story.
Okay, perfect.
I have a great story. It's good. I was actually praying about the podcast. I'm like, it'd be so fun if I could tell this story. So, it's funny and it's amazing. It's incredible. So I was teaching Bible Trailer. Okay. And these kids, oh my gosh, they were just so precious. Like they would every day have like these amazing, like profound questions about, incredible. Like I found God was in that Bible Trailer. I mean, it was just incredible. Like being able to tell these kids about Jesus. They'd never heard about Jesus. They didn't even never heard about sin. What's sin? But so one day we were in the Bible Trailer and when I went in that morning, the door felt weird. Like, I'm like, gosh, it was kind of hard to open. But I'm like, okay, that was weird, whatever. Like, I couldn't tell if my key was unlocking or whatever. So I got in my first class in, and it came time to leave, and I could not get the door that was not open. So, like, I'm locked in the Bible Trailer with these kids.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so there's 2 doors to the Bible Trailer. So I'm like, well, let's just, maybe we could just like get out the other door and jump down or move the stairs or whatever. So it was like this big thing. I'm like, the door would not open. And so I'm going to the front door, going to the back door. And by this time the teacher is like knocking, like, hello. And I'm like, I cannot get the door open. Like, I don't even know. I literally, so like, I'm like, is it locked? Is it unlocked? And I was like body slamming it and kicking it with my foot. And I'd have, the big little 9-year-old boys. I'll try, Mrs. Clark. And he's like up there trying to open it. And I mean, it is not opening. And I'm not like, now I'm like, literally don't even know. And and I'm like, the teacher's like out there. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I don't even know what is going on. So it had been a long time. Like we were going back and forth to the doors, everything. Finally, a student raised their hand. Mrs. Clark, and you guys, we are like, why don't we pray? Why don't we pray? Yeah. No, and you are not going to believe what happened. So I'm like, okay, God, you're going to come through because well, of course we're going to pray. Yes. So we prayed. You guys, the next time I go to the door, it opened like butter.
Amen. Childlike faith.
It was unbelievable. And the kids were like, what? And I was like, what? Yeah. I mean, that happened. It was amazing.
That's good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
So that is one of my funniest and amazing memories of
I
God.
love it. And then last, Chris Jackson. That looks like the bill. I put a picture of you at one of your daughter's wedding. Is your picture there?
Oh, you're
I went on Facebook. I thought that was beautiful. So that's what I used.
You're so precious.
I'm a stalker today. That looks like the Biltmore estate behind them. I hope they love it as much as I did 2 weeks ago. I guess that's the question. I am correct. Is that the Biltmore?
It's not.
It's not the Biltmore.
It's not. I've never been there, but I'm so glad you loved it.
So where is that?
It's at a church in Indy where our daughter got married. I couldn't even tell you the name of it right now, but it's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, church in Indy.
Fabulous.
Right in our very own state.
Fabulous.
Yay.
Okay, Jennifer, send us out.
Okay, so if If you would like to be a part of our podcast texting group to be able to send in a question every week, make sure to text podcast to 260-408-8383 and we'll send a question out or let you know who our guest is on Tuesday morning. You can send us some questions.
Yeah, good. Mary,
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
again for coming. Thank you for everything that you've done. Don't forget, when this comes out tomorrow, Thursday, whichever day that it comes out tomorrow, when it comes out, make sure that you share it, make sure to like it, comment. Also, there's going to be a link somewhere. Nick will put it in there to go onto the Angel app.
Thank you.
And if you go onto the Angel app, it's going to cost you some money, but it's well worth it. Cost something to overcome, the media and Satan, and let's get this movie out. And
It's confusing. If you have any trouble, text Lance and he can send you a direct link. It's super confusing. So
Okay.
thank you.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything we can do, but again, make sure we get this out. Make sure we share a lot of great stuff today. And so we appreciate you being on. So thanks for joining us. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.